Welcome to another episode of Mike's Money Picks. Today on the podcast, we're going to be breaking down the first day of the second weekend in the NCAA Tournament. That is right, it's time for regional action in the Sweet 16, and we're going to be breaking down the Thursday slate, Thursday, March 27, 2025. We're going to break down all four games, tell you what you can expect from each game, as well as who needs to be in or out of your DFS lineups, as well as some other stats and info that you will need if you want to make any bets or player props or anything like that for the Thursday slate. Now, I got to say, y'all, while a part of me is a little bit hurt that we don't have any like true Cinderellas or true sleepers or like national storylines of teams that are surprises to be here, it does kind of hurt a little bit. But the pro of that is that we're going to get some absolutely great matchups over the next few days, especially from DFS purposes. Like, we've got some really interesting strategies, really interesting plays here on this slate. And really, that's kind of the greatness of March Madness, right? Is it's great if you have upsets, but yet it also turns great if you don't. So this is going to be a really fun weekend. We're going to be here all weekend breaking it down. So make sure you are subscribed to the channel. That way you can be with us as we break down the Friday Sweet 16 slate and then the Saturday and Sunday Elite 8 slates as well. And this is a huge time of year for my channel and the podcast, just trying to grow. So if this video helps you out in any way, please hit the like button. It really does help me out a ton when you guys do that, and I cannot stress it enough. If you're listening on audio, please rate and review. It has the same exact effect, and really, I cannot grow the community without the help from you guys. And it's been a great March for us. Like last weekend at the NCAA tournament, we did not do so well on the Thursday and Friday, the 16 game slates, but we had some really good breakdowns and some really good reads on the Saturday and Sunday slates, and it was massively positive days for us. And so hopefully, if you guys were watching that content, hopefully you guys are profitable as well. Let's hope to do it again here this week, except we're going to try to go like Wendy's this week. We're going to try to go 4 for 4. All right. So let's go ahead and dive in. We got 4 games to break down for the Thursday slate. All right, so game number 1 is going to be a fun one. Like, I think this is going to be one of the most entertaining games of the NCAA tournament. We've got Alabama taking on BYU in Newark, which is the East Regional, aka Duke's region. And this is going to be a fun game. Ken Pom thinks it's going to be a fun game as well. Ken Pom has this game projected to be 89-84 in favor of Alabama. That is a 173-point total, which is the highest of the night by 17 points. Really, we're going to actually go, the order we're going in the breakdown is going to be actually the order of the game totals. This is the best one. We're going to end with the worst one, 1, 2, 3, 4 straight order. But still, all 4 of these games are good game environments. There's not a total lower than 148 on Ken Pom. But this one, 173. Holy crap. Why is this total so high? Well, you have 2 really good offenses. BYU ranks 9th in the nation in offensive efficiency. They are 6th in effective field goal percentage, and they're not great with turnovers. They do tend to turn the ball over a whole lot, but Alabama is a team that does not force a lot of turnovers. That's kind of like a plus there for BYU. They're going to have a lot of chances to put the ball in the hoop, and they're pretty good at it. And also, they are a great rebounding team. The one weakness of BYU is that they're a poor 3-point defense, and teams shoot them a lot against them. Meanwhile, on the Alabama side, Alabama ranks 4th in offensive efficiency, 29th in defensive efficiency, so not a great defense for Bama. BYU is 71st, so Bama does have the edge on that regard. Alabama is a team that has a huge rim and 3 rate, which means that they're very analytically driven. They take a lot of their shots as layups and dunks or a lot of 3-pointers, which is going to help them against BYU because BYU is going to encourage them to shoot threes. Now, here's the reason why this game should really take off. You have a combination of Bama's tempo and BYU's lack of defense. Alabama ranks 1st in the nation in tempo, which is a big-time pace up from BYU's 178th, and BYU is not a great defense. They rank 71st in defensive efficiency. That's much worse than what Alabama has seen recently in the SEC tournament and in round 2 against St. Mary's. So how do we take advantage of this from a DraftKings perspective? Well, this is a game that you are going to really, really want to stack based off of all those statistics, right? Now, the problem is that the BYU side is really hard to stack because they play a lot of guys. So who are the most likely candidates to break out for this BYU side? Well, number 1 will be Richie Saunders. He is, in my opinion, their best player. He is their highest usage player. In both their NCAA tournament games, he's played 30 minutes. In both those NCAA tournament games, he's put up at least 27 DraftKings points. I think he's a really solid play. I think Alabama pace is going to help him a lot. He's a decent peripheral stat player, but not an elite one. But, at $7,300 at this tempo, with this pattern of usage, I like Richie Saunders as a play a lot. I also love Igor Demon. I was all over him on the Saturday slate. And it's a big-time reason why it was a successful Saturday slate for me. He put up 11, 8, and 8 for 35 DraftKings points in this one, and that was against Wisconsin. This is a game that's going to get more up and down than that one. Yes, he's getting a big-time price up to $6,900. So it's $6,900. What we really want to see is 28 DraftKings points, which is only a number that he's hit once in the last month and a half. which is not exactly a good sign, but keep in mind the pace that this game is going to be played at. It's going to be played at Alabama's pace, which is the best in the nation. Igor Demon very likely to see 27 or more minutes. He saw 27 against Wisconsin, 31 against VCU. So I think this is a pretty good spot for Demon, and I'm absolutely willing to go back to him, even though the price tag has been increased. Keba Keita is a guy that's kind of an interesting play for me. So he's a guy whose minutes are kind of capped, right? He never plays more than 25 minutes. The one time he did was an overtime game against Iowa State. They're pretty much going to keep his minutes in that 20 to 24 range, which makes it really hard for him to hit value in that amount of time, but he's done so in the last 3 games. Like, he is a very high usage player when he's out there. He's got a great rebound rate, blocks a lot of shots. If you told me right now, hey, Mike, he's going to play north of 25 minutes, I would say put him in every single one of my lineups because of how great of a fantasy point per minute player he is. But it's kind of a hard sell otherwise, right? Alabama all season long has been a team that has kind of been gotten by bigs in the SEC, but they've really kind of flipped that trend as they've gotten in the postseason play and in the NCAA tournament. So I don't really know what to make of Keita. I know the minute cap worries me. It definitely caps his ceiling, but I think it's quite likely that he's going to hit value at this salary because he does it pretty much every game. Now, the reason why Keita splits minutes is because they also play Fousseyni Traore at the center position. He pretty much gets the leftovers from whatever Keita does not get. He's also a guy who is an elite fantasy point per minute player, supremely high usage player, great rebounder, can block shots as well. But his minutes are also capped because of the minutes that Keita plays, right? Now, I think Traore is kind of more of a GPP type play, whereas Keita is more of a cash game survivor type play. There is a survivor this weekend. Unfortunately, it's $160, so I will not be in it. Sorry. But Traore is kind of more of an upside play because what if he does get the minutes, he can smash, right? Whereas Keita has kind of been getting more minutes and Keita's been consistent. Traore is kind of the more volatile profile. So if you're playing GPPs, to me, Traore's got to be in your player pool. I feel kind of the same way about Trevin Knell and Dallin Hall. They also split minutes. Knell had a really good game against Wisconsin. In only 18 minutes, he was able to put up 21 DraftKings points, largely because he went 4 for 6 from 3. But Knell is not a big peripheral stat guy, whereas Dallin Hall is. And so to me, Dallin Hall makes a lot more sense for the play in this game because A, he's been playing more minutes than Trevin Knell, but B, I really like peripheral stat guys in pace-up spots. And to me, that screams the type of profile like Dallin Hall. But honestly, my favorite play on the BYU side might be Mawot Mag. We've kind of joked in the Fantasy Corner Discord, more on that a little bit later. We've kind of joked about calling him like the official cardio king because of how many minutes he plays, and he doesn't really shoot the ball a whole lot, but like when you're playing a ton of minutes, which he's played 58 so far in this NCAA tournament at a salary of $3,800, he's very playable, right? And in the last 2 games, he's put up 17 and 13 DraftKings points. That's nothing to write home about, but considering that this is a pace-up game, considering he's going to be on the floor a ton, I think it makes a lot of sense to have him as a value play just to get some extra exposure to this game. The last guy I will mention that's in the rotation is Dawson Baker. He was ejected against Wisconsin for a groin shot, which I didn't know it was a rule that if there was a groin shot, it had to be either nothing at all or a flagrant 2. That seems a little bit weird to me that there's no distinction in the middle. It's a weird rule. I don't like it. But he was ejected in that game, was on track for a good game. 17 minutes, 12 and a half DraftKings points. If he could have finished out that game, he probably could have put up more. I don't mind him as a play in this one because, again, he's a cheap play that's going to be guaranteed to see some minutes in a great game environment. And I think that this is kind of a good way to go after cheap players, right? So that's all BYU. Like I said, they play a ton of guys. So really the other side of this game is going to be much easier to target, the Alabama side, because of how DraftKings has done their pricing. Mark Sears is down to $7,700, which is largely because he really failed against St. Mary's. He only had 18 DraftKings points in 26 minutes, but the usage rate has still been insane. We've talked about since the start of the SEC tournament how last season Mark Sears' usage went through the roof in the postseason, and it is continuing to be that. He just hasn't really had the production with the exception of the Robert Morris game. So I really think it's a great buy low spot on Sears. I do think he's going to be super popular though, because you got to remember, like, people who play DraftKings, you're not playing against a bunch of like know-nothing casuals at this point, right? Like, this is going to be people who know what they're doing, and they see the price tag on Sears, they know who he is, and they know what this game environment's going to be like, right? So Sears is going to be super popular. The other guy that's going to be super popular is Grant Nelson. He was not healthy heading into this tournament, but against St. Mary's, he played his full 28 minutes. He put up his full 26 DraftKings points. He's just simply mispriced at $5,200. Now, is there a chance that he doesn't get there? Yeah, but you got a guy who's going to play a ton of minutes, who's a starter, who's this team's second best basketball player at $5,200, clearly a misprice when he's been a 7K player most of the season. I think a lot of people, when they make their lineups here on this slate, they're going to start off with Sears, they're going to start off with Nelson, and then they're going to go get Cooper Flagg. More on him a little bit later. But I think that that's going to be a super common build. And so what you're going to need to do is, if you're starting off with that build, which I think is a viable strategy, then you're going to want to either A, look to get different with some other plays, or B, you're going to have to get your BYU plays right, because the BYU guys can go a million different directions. We don't know who's going to be the guy you're going to need from BYU, but if you get your BYU guy right, that could be a way to unlock that build, or you could look to get different in another way, right? You can't just play the same guys that everybody else is going to play because they're the best plays, unless you're playing cash games or Survivor. But I think that Sears Nelson start is going to be super popular, right? Now, who can you play on the Alabama side that might not be as popular? May I suggest LeBaron Philon, who has been putting up insane peripheral stat numbers in the last few games. 11 combined rebounds and assists last game, 5 combined blocks and steals last game against St. Mary's, and that was against St. Mary's, right? Philon's a guy that hasn't been all that great with his shot recently. In fact, you look at the last 3 games, and he has a total of 3 for 18 from the field. So you could say that he's due for some regression of his shot. I kind of buy that. I think if you don't want to play the Mark Sears chalk, LeBaron Philon is a great way to get away from that, because of his ability to put up peripheral stats and the fact that he's due for some shooting regression, and he's still playing a ton of minutes. Like as poorly as he shot the ball in this NCAA tournament, he still played 28 minutes in both those games. Mo Diabate, I think his upside is kind of capped now that Grant Nelson is back. You saw his minutes dip from the Robert Morris game to the St. Mary's game because of that, but he is an incredible fantasy point per minute play. I don't necessarily think bigs versus BYU is where I want to target. Like you watched what Wisconsin did against BYU. They were doing it with guards. We had Tanjay and Blackwell just going off against BYU. To me, that's kind of how you want to attack them. So I'm not the biggest fan of Diabate, but I am just getting it out there telling you guys that he's a great fantasy point per minute player. And if Nelson were to get in foul trouble like that and he were to see his minutes go up, you could absolutely see him smash the slate. Big Cliff Amorie has had his best games in an Alabama uniform in the NCAA tournament, 31 and 32 DraftKings points in back-to-back games. Will it continue? I don't know, but this team finally has figured out how to use him offensively, which is just, hey, Big Cliff, come here and set this screen for me and then roll to the rim like a madman. And if you're open, I'm going to lob it up to you because I know you can put it down. That's how they've been using him. It's how he should be used. And they finally figured that out, and he's been great. He's been great. So if he continues to be great, he can absolutely smash this price tag at $5,800. I do not feel like if you play Nelson, you have to feel restricted to not play Amorie. Like, I think you can play both those guys in the lineup because the fact that they're not going to take minutes from each other. They're not the same role of player, and they're both going to be out there on the floor a lot. I do think you can get to both of them. Now, if you want to take a chance with some cheap Alabama guys, may I interest you in some Aiden Holloway? If you're a longtime listener of the podcast, you know that it dates back to the very first Auburn versus Baylor game last year when I fell in love with this kid watching him. I think the kid's talented. I think he's got the it factor. If Mark Sears were to struggle or get in foul trouble, or LeBaron Philon were to struggle and get in foul trouble, Holloway could come in and play big minutes, and he is a big-time shot maker. Against St. Mary's, came in, played 22 minutes, put up 17 DraftKings points. At a salary of $4,200, we'll take that. I think he's a very solid play. And again, much like the guys on the BYU side, I think he's a very easy way to get exposure to this game. Chris Youngblood has kind of been turned into just a catch-and-shoot player, which is kind of sad, but also like he's been hitting. So like $4,100 for a guy who's going to play 25 plus minutes and is going to take probably around 5 to 6 threes. I don't mind it. And then Jaron Stevenson is another guy kind of like Mo Diabate that saw his minutes definitively drop when Grant Nelson was back. Steven is also kind of a catch and shoot player, yet take a 3 in this NCAA tournament. So in terms of the cheap Bama guys, I think that Youngblood is probably the safest. Holloway probably has the most upside. Stevenson's probably the one that I'm not touching. All right, let's go ahead and move on to game number 2, Maryland taking on Florida. This is a fun one. Like, I think this might be the best game of the Sweet 16 slate. I've been high on this Maryland team for about a month now. I was really disappointed when the bracket came out and I saw that they were going up against Florida because I've been high on this Florida team as well too. Florida's my national champion in my bracket, but it's hard not to be a believer in Maryland when you watch them play. Like, both of these teams really pass the eye test. And Ken Pom seems to think so as well. They have this game being Florida 81-75. That's a total of 156 points because both of these teams, while they're both really good on defense, they're both top 11 in defensive efficiency. They both get up and down. They're both top 65 in tempo, and they're both good offenses. They're both in the top 25 in offensive efficiency. Florida, in particular, ranks second. So let's talk about this Maryland side. This is a very easy team to handicap, and if you're playing cash games, this is the team you're going to want to get exposure to because A, it's a great pace environment for them, and B, they don't sit their starters. They play their whole 5 starters pretty much the entire game. They do not believe in load management. They do not believe in rest. They're basically the college version of Tom Thibodeau. They sat their starters for a combined 21 minutes against Colorado State. Between 5 players, they sat 21 minutes. That's about 4 minutes a player. That's really good. And if you're saying, well, Mike, what about foul trouble? Well, other than Julian Reese, they're all really good at avoiding foul trouble. All right, so let's break them down. So Derek Queen was the hero of the game against Colorado State. He was a slight disappointment from a DraftKings perspective with only 29 DraftKings points. I thought he would smash the slate against a Colorado State team that could not defend Dane Danger, but Colorado State really changed up their strategy. They did a really good job on Maryland, I thought, and had a really good game plan coming in. Props to Colorado State. Derek Queen is just a guy that I just play in DraftKings a lot because he has a really high ceiling. Like you can see in his game log, he had a 60-point game against Rutgers, and he hits 40 quite often. And now he's $8,600 on a slate where a ton of people are going to be paying all the way up for Cooper Flagg. I kind of like the idea of going to Derek Queen in that situation and taking some savings because Queen is a guy who can absolutely break a slate. Queen's partner in the front court is Julian Reese. Angel Reese's younger brother, if you were not aware. The only thing that inhibits Julian Reese is foul trouble. The only thing, like if he stays out of foul trouble, he's pretty much a lock for 4X. But you look at the games that he has not done well in from a DraftKings perspective, they're either massive blowouts like the Illinois game or foul trouble games like the Michigan game. Every game he stays out of foul trouble, he smashes. So your propensity to play him is going to be your ability to think he stays out of foul trouble, right? Personal opinion here. I think these Maryland bigs can get the Florida bigs in foul trouble and flip that narrative. And I think Reese is a big part of that. Both Reese and Queen draw a lot of fouls. So if you think that that's the narrative, then I'm absolutely playing Reese. Like I think he's a great play on this slate as well. Now for the 3 guards, you've got Gillespie, Rice, and Miguel. Gillespie is a guy whose price tag is actually down because his usage has actually been trending slightly downward since the start of postseason play. You're starting to see a little bit more for Rice and Miguel, a little less for Gillespie, but he's still consistently putting up 30 DraftKings points every single game. I think he's a good cash game play. I worry about him against the length and size of Florida guards because Gillespie is a little bit on the smaller side. I don't think he's the best play in the world, but I think he's a very safe play because of the minutes and different ways he can accumulate fantasy points. On the other hand, Rodney Rice is kind of just a catch and shoot type of player. And if he gets hot, look out. Like in the Illinois game when he was 7 for 9 from 3, put up 32 DraftKings points. The Colorado State game, he took 17 shots. He put up 23 DraftKings points. That's really good for a salary of $5,300. I'm normally not the biggest Rodney Rice guy. I normally play Selton Miguel a lot more because I usually find Rice overpriced. But now that Rice is down here at $5,300, if Florida's strategy is just to pack the paint and force these Maryland guards to shoot, Rice would be the primary beneficiary, and I could absolutely see a pathway to him smashing the slate at $5,300. I don't know if I'm confident enough to say that he's going to be a core play, but he is going to make my player pool. And I feel the same way about Selton Miguel. He has taken on over a little more of a playmaker role in the postseason. He's playing a ton of minutes when he's out of foul trouble. And at $4,700, we want about 18 and 19 DraftKings points at him for 4X value. Well, he's done that in 6 of the last 8 games. It's pretty solid. He's really cheap. There's not a whole lot of value on this slate. I'm a big fan of Selton Miguel. Normally, all season long, I've kind of put in rules in place when I use my advisor to only get one of Rice and Miguel. Now that they're both cheap, now that we're on a small slate, I think you can play them both together. I don't necessarily think that's the optimal strategy, but I think it's a possible strategy because, like I said, I think Florida, if they try to pack the paint and force these Maryland guards to shoot, that's going to benefit those 2 guys more than anybody else. Now, on the Florida side, let's talk about them. Guards are the way you beat this Maryland team. You look at who has had the big games against Maryland all season long. It's been guards. Walter Clayton Jr. is Florida's best guard. He struggled in the first half against UConn, rebounded in the second, still put up 28 DraftKings points. And not his best performance, 5 turnovers, which is uncharacteristic of him. But he's still a supremely high usage player. He still has the ball in his hands all the time. And he can still put up peripheral stats, even though it was an unusually down game against UConn. I'm willing to buy the dip and say at $8,000, I'm willing to pay that price tag for him. I think that game stacks of this game are going to be a little bit high leverage considering everybody is going to be stacking the Bama BYU game. And I think that Clayton is a great way you can do that because of his ability to put up fancy points in a variety of ways and the fact that he's going to have the ball in his hands. Will Richard and Elijah Martin are guys I've also been kind of hot and cold on all season long because they're kind of, just it's kind of hard to feel super confident in them because they can be so inconsistent, right? But Will Richard, he's been real consistent as of late. It's $6,200, which is a super reasonable price tag for him. And much like Rodney Rice on the other side, if Maryland's strategy is to pack the paint and force Florida to shoot threes, it's going to be Richard that's going to be shooting him. And I can see a pathway for him breaking the slate. And I feel the same way about Elijah Martin. Elijah Martin is a great peripheral stat guy, great rebound rate, great assist rate, plays a ton of minutes. And so if this game gets going up and down, which there's a chance it does with Maryland's tempo being pretty solid, I could see a pathway for Elijah Martin, like just totally nuking the slate as well. So all three of these Florida guards are going to make my player pool. I don't necessarily know how much exposure I'm going to have to them, but like there's pathways for all of them to nuke the slate. Florida's bigs are the ones that I'm going to be less enthused on because A, they're splitting minutes, and B, I don't think bigs are how you attack this Maryland team. If I were to play one of them, it'd be Alex Condon because I think he's the best one of them. He's the most versatile. He's by far the best matchup for Derek Queen on this Florida team, but I think there's a chance Queen could get him in foul trouble. Now Condon is generally pretty good at avoiding foul trouble. The only real foul trouble game he's had in a while has been the Tennessee game in the SEC tournament, right? But I still think Condon's in a pretty good spot. I really just don't think this is the best matchup for him, though. So I'm probably not going to be getting to a whole lot of Alex Condon. Now, granted, that could totally flip on me, and it could be the other way around, and Condon's getting the Maryland bigs in foul trouble, but I really see it happening the other way. And then after that, you have this big minute split between Thomas Hoff, Ruben Chinyello, and Micah Handlockton. Hoff has been great as a fantasy points per minute guy, but his minute totals are just super inconsistent, right? And I don't think bigs are how you attack this Maryland team. Chinyello dealt with foul trouble big time against UConn, only played 14 minutes. Also dealt with foul trouble in the SEC tournament against Alabama. He seems to always be fouling, which makes it really hard to feel confident about him. Hasn't played more than 18 minutes in the last 5 games. And then you got Handlockton down here, who is just kind of filling in as a backup. He really needs somebody else to be in foul trouble to smash the slate, or a blowout to smash the slate. And I think the foul trouble narrative is much more likely to happen than the blowout. So $3,500, he's a viable punt play, but not my favorite one on the entire slate. All right, that's going to do it for the first 2 games. Let's take a quick breather, and then we're going to break down the last 2. All right, before we continue, I do want to mention there are places where you can get more information from me. First off, you can follow me on Twitter. I tweet out all updates for the show. I'm more than happy to answer any questions if you reach out to me on there. Also, you can join me in the Fantasy Corner Discord. I am a full big-time believer in this Discord. It's a fun time, and it's very informative as well. But basically, the Fantasy Corner Discord is a community of a bunch of people who play DFS for a lot of different sports. I'm talking NFL, NBA, MLB, college basketball has been probably the best chat all season long. College football, when it's in season, is great. We even got some UFL chat coming up. So join that if you're looking for people to talk DFS with, just talking lineups, talking strategy, talking plays all day long, and then sweating it out together. And you've got some people in there who are really in tune with starting lineups and injury news, which is super helpful to have for a lot of these slates. I cannot recommend it enough if you're looking to be a community like that. And then also, if you want to know who actually makes my DFS lineups, head on over to the Patreon, patreon.com/MikesMoneyPicks. From there, I have a full article for every main college basketball slate where I post my core plays as well as why they're my core plays. So you can get a full write-up on why I'm playing who I'm playing. Now, I can't just sit here and guarantee that you plug them in and instantly win thousands of dollars, because if you were following those core plays on Thursday and Friday last week, you probably didn't have a great day. But if you were following them on Saturday, Sunday, you probably raked. But what I can guarantee you with those plays is you're getting well-researched, well-thought-out plays from somebody who knows what they're doing with this stuff and can give you the best advice and best strategies to better your college basketball DFS game. All right, now let's go ahead and talk about game number 3, which I find super fascinating. It is Arizona taking on Duke in Newark, and this is a game where KenPom has it as 81-73 in favor of the Blue Devils. That is a total of 154 points, which is quite high normally, but third on this slate, believe it or not. This is a rematch of a game that was played in November, back before Thanksgiving, where Duke went to Tucson and beat Arizona 69-55. The only player that really had a big game in that game was Cooper Flagg, which should not be a shocker. He had 44 DraftKings points in that game. It was kind of a slower paced game. Both of the 2 teams in that game were kind of still like feeling out their own offenses. And so you had different starting lineups in that game than what both teams are going to be rolling out here in this one. So I wouldn't put too much stock in that game. I would be much more looking at what these teams are doing recently and how they're going to fare against each other. And what they've been doing recently is this: Arizona is a quite balanced team. They rank 13th offensively, 28th defensive efficiency, and 49th in tempo. They're They're a big-time pace-up for Duke, who Duke is the only team in the nation who's top 5 on both sides of the ball, first in offense, fourth in defense, but they rank 270th in tempo. And Duke has not been tested in a long time. So with their full complement of players, I should say, in a long time. So this is going to be like a really good chance to see what Duke is going to do, if they win this game. I should say when they win this game, for the rest of the NCAA tournament, because you're going to see what they will do when they're actually tested with a close game environment, right? So for Arizona, here's where we got to start things, y'all. Do you like feeling alive? Do you enjoy adrenaline? Do you like watching train wrecks? If so, Caleb Love is your guy. Caleb Love, ever since his days at North Carolina, is the type of guy that when you play in DraftKings, there is no security, but there's a ton of upside because you don't know what's going to happen, but you know that something is going to happen. That is Caleb Love. He has never seen a shot that he didn't like. He's one of the most irrational confidence basketball players I've ever seen, but doggone it if he doesn't make a few of them every now and then. And when he gets hot, he gets hot. Just like he did against Oregon when he put up 49 DraftKings points in 37 minutes. And Caleb Love, also known hater of the Duke Blue Devils, dating back to his time at North Carolina, scored 28 in Coach K's final game in the Final Four in 2022, hitting the dagger shot with 30 seconds to go. He also, for his career, averages 16, 5, 3, and a steal against Duke. That's pretty good stats. If you play GPPs, or if you love taking a trip down Narrative Street, Caleb Love has to be in your player pool. Has to be. Am I saying he's going to be a great play? No, because Lord knows I can't guarantee that. But what I can guarantee is that there is a chance that Caleb Love could absolutely massacre this entire slate. And for that reason, he's going to be in my player pool. And that's all I got to say about that. Now, from there, Arizona's bigs are going to be in for a tough time in this game, in my opinion, right? So let's talk about the bigs first. So Henry Vesar is currently splitting minutes with Toby Awaka at the center position. It's not really working out very often for either of them from a DraftKings perspective. Awaka had the huge game against Oregon where he played 22 minutes, looked great, put up 34 DraftKings points. But that is not the norm, right? Like, you cannot really tell me a guarantee for either way which one of those two is going to play more minutes, which one of those two is going to play better. If you ask me to pick, I'd pick Awaka because he's cheaper. Now, what I think is a super interesting part of this Duke game is how are they going to guard Cooper Flagg? Well, in the first game against Duke, what you saw was they put a lot of KJ Lewis on him, and it didn't really work. And then they put Trey Townsend on him, and it didn't really work. The guy that did the best one-on-one against Cooper Flagg was Carter Bryant. Because basically Carter Bryant's the type of guy that when they run screen and roll, no matter what role Flagg is in, you could switch Bryant onto whoever the other guy is, right? Bryant's also the most athletic against him one-on-one. Like, you want to guard Cooper Flagg with a guy that's like 6'9", lengthy, and can you kind of give him a little bit of a challenge in the driving lanes and on jump shots, right? Bryant's kind of the closest thing that Arizona has to that because, Flagg is just going to body the guards like Lewis and Love, which Caleb Love guarded him for a little bit. And if you guard him with a big, he's just going to blow by Vesar and Townsend. Like Townsend, as much as I like his offensive game, I think this is a nightmare matchup for Townsend. This is a guy that's a transfer from the Horizon League. I don't think he's built to match up with the NBA specimens that Duke has. Sorry, Townsend. I just don't think this is going to be the game for you. So if Townsend's not playing a whole lot and Duke is going to have to, or Arizona's going to have to play Carter Bryant for defensive purposes, I think that Bryant is a great look at $4,500 in DFS because also another thing Bryant does, Bryant's a shooter. So if Cooper Flagg is guarding Bryant on the other end, he has to respect that shot and he cannot sit and lurk in the paint and block shots and get easy rebounds. So I think Carter Bryant could be a big time key for this game for Arizona, honestly. Now, the other two guards for Arizona, KJ Lewis and Jaden Bradley, they're going to play nearly the entire game. If you made me pick between the two of them, I would pick Bradley just because, A, he's guaranteed to see more minutes. KJ Lewis does come off the bench. B, Bradley has been playing better in the postseason since KJ Lewis, just by a little bit. And C, he is just a little bit cheaper. So I would prefer Bradley between the two of them. But I really think that, Caleb Love is going to have some exposure for me. Bradley second, Lewis third in terms of those guard positions. They're all three going to make my player pool, though. Now, on the Duke side, here's what we got that's really interesting. Cooper Flagg, $9,800. That's not where his price tag's been all season. He's been having 5 figures all season long. Now he's got 4. He's going to be super popular on this slate. He's going to be one of the most highest owned players. I guarantee it. Guarantee it. Like, bet real American currency on it. he's going to be popular. And so if you're making one of those lineups, like I said earlier, with Flag, with Sears, with Nelson, you're going to have to find a way to get different somewhere else, right? I think he's a good play, though. I really do. He put up 44 against Arizona already. They're pretty much showing their cards that they're going to really play through him in the NCAA tournament. When you look at what he did in that Baylor game, 39 fantasy points, I should say, in 29 minutes, that's an incredible ratio. So I think he's going to continue with that. And like I said, I think in a closer game, he's going to play more minutes. Now, the problem with the next two guys, Knipple and Proctor, is that they've both been priced up from what they were doing when Flag was out in the ACC tournament, and they were just killing it, right? Proctor has been great in this tournament, 32 and 35 DraftKings points in both those games, but with both those really being close games, with him being hyper efficient from three-point land in both those games, he's 13 for 16 from three in the NCAA tournament so far. I think he's kind of due for some negative shooting regression, and I'm kind of out on Knipple and Proctor. Now, Kaman Malawach, I think, is a super interesting play. We've talked about him at length this season, where he is a minutes limited player. He never plays more than 25 minutes, but he can get there in a hurry because of the way he can rack up fantasy points. I don't think he's a bad play at $5,500. Sion James is kind of the X factor for Duke. He's only $4,900 on DraftKings. I think that's a solid price for him. He hasn't really seen a ton of usage in the NCAA tournament because of the blowout game environments, but in a game where they're going to want his defense, they're going to want his veteran leadership and his playmaking ability, I don't mind getting to James at $4,900. Out of the Duke starting five, I'm probably ranking it Flag 1, James 2. And then the only other Duke guy I'm probably considering is Patrick Ngongba. So he's another guy that's kind of like the bench version of Malawach, right? Like his minutes are limited, but his fantasy point per minute ratio is insane. And so, kind of the way that the minute split works between those guys, if Ngongba does happen to play a decent amount, he could absolutely smash a price tag at $3,700. So he's a punt play that is going to make my player pool. All right, last game of the night, we've got Arkansas taking on Texas Tech. This one is a game total that's not bad. It's 77-71 in favor of Texas Tech, according to KenPom. That is a 148-point total. On a normal slate, that would be one of the higher games. This one is dead last by 6 points. What's interesting about it, though, is that you just have so many what's the right word I'm looking here? So many variables in play in this game, right? Like there's a lot of unknowns in this game. This is the hardest game to project out of all four. Arkansas, as a whole, this season ranks 65th in offensive efficiency, 17th on defense, 68th tempo. Hey, that's pretty good. Texas Tech, 5th on offense. That's really good. 37th on defense, 261st in tempo. So let's talk about the Arkansas side. So here's the big time variable from the Arkansas side, right? Adu Thero, who has been out for about the last month, is now back. He's available, but he's on a minutes restriction. I don't think he is playable at $7,000 on DraftKings on a minutes restriction. That's just my thoughts. But also at the same time, Boogie Fland was supposed to be on a minutes restriction too. He was coming off the bench, played 24 minutes against Kansas. That's quite a lot. It'd be really a tough ask for Thero to get value in DFS in only 24 minutes, though. So Thero is probably out of my player pool. But the problem is that if Thero is back in the rotation, what does that do to the rest of the Arkansas guys? Well, I think that's going to be a big-time cut down on Trevon Brazile, who has been playing like every minute. He is not a high-usage player offensively. He's really just a corner three-point guy, but he's a great rebounder, and he uses those minutes to rack up rebounds, right? So I think that Trevon Brazile is probably going to be X'd out of my player pool now that Adu Thero is back into the lineup, because he's not going to have those same minute totals that have made him able to accumulate a lot of fantasy points on not a whole lot of usage. I hope that made sense. I also think it's going to be a little bit of expense for Billy Richmond III, who played great against St. John's, and a little bit of an expense in the minutes of Carter Knox, who also played great against St. John's. Like I just don't see those guys playing their big minute totals when Thero is back in the lineup. Now, who I do not think it's going to affect is Big Z, Zvonimir Ivisic, and Jonas Adu. So here's what's been happening with them two recently. Adu has moved into the starting lineup. Ivisic has moved to the bench, and Ivisic, whenever he gets in the game, just hacks. He just fouls a lot. Insanely a lot. He is not in my player pool, even though he's at $4,000, and I know the upside that he has because he's playing very low minutes and he's coming in and he's having foul trouble. I just can't get behind it. Adu, on the other hand, is playing a ton of minutes. a ton. Against St. John's, it was like a low for him recently at 22, and he still put up 22 DraftKings points in that game. But it was because he was in foul trouble. But more often than not, he's not getting in foul trouble, or he's fouling so late in the game that it's not really foul trouble. And so that's allowing him to absolutely smash his salary of $7,100 on DraftKings. Texas Tech is not a great matchup for bigs, though. JT Toppin is a guy that will draw fouls. So I think Adu is a guy that's going to make my player pool, but not be a huge part of it. Now, the guards for Arkansas, Davis, Wagner, and Fland. I think that you're running into a problem where Davis and Wagner are still priced up for their body of work when Fland was not healthy. And now Fland is back. Fland has had a week of rest now. Fland would be the guy that I would be playing. Because remember, Boogie Fland was a 9K player back when he was healthy. And now he's playing about 2/3 of the minutes that he was playing back then. So if you were to do the math there, he should be worth about 6K, and he should be expected to put up about 22 DraftKings points, right? So I think $4,800 for him is a reasonable price tag. He's a guy that I'm going to be on a lot here on this slate. Now, let's talk about the Texas Tech side. So we talked about all episode long where the expected chalk is going to be, right? You want to be different on this slate? Play JT Toppin instead of Cooper Flagg. And why might you want to do that? Well, JT Toppin is a guy that can nuke a DraftKings slate. He put up 70, literally 70 DraftKings points against Arizona State earlier this season. 70. That's 7x value for a $10,000 salary. Now, I'm not saying that he's going to do that against Arkansas, but Arkansas has been a matchup that has been exploited by big. Zuby Ejiofor had a great game against them on Saturday. Hunter Dickinson had a great game going against them on Thursday until he kind of imploded in the second half. So I do think that this is a pretty good spot for JT Toppin as a big against this Arkansas team in a situation where he's not going to be highly owned at all. Now, I'm curious. Let me see what this would look like. If I were to set up a lineup with Flagg and Toppin in it, I would have an average remaining salary of $5,000. I think that's actually possible. But like I said, I don't think that a lot of people are going to play Toppin because I think everybody is going to be playing Flagg. So playing Toppin is going to be a way that you can get different off of all the Cooper Flagg chalk, and he's a high upside way of doing so. Darion Williams is seeing a big-time price bump after his game against Drake, where he put up 47 DraftKings points. And look, I think it's as simple as this. Drake did not have anybody athletically who could hang with Darion Williams with his size and his athleticism. Arkansas does. So I don't think this is a great matchup for Darion Williams. Is there a chance he could do what he did again? I mean, yeah, but is it a likely outcome? Probably not. So he's probably going to make my player pool, but not be a big part of it. I really hesitate to full fade a guy like Darion Williams just because there's a chance, like, if the old like Dumb and Dumber meme, so you're saying there's a chance he could break a slate, but I don't think it's likely here on this one. So he's probably going to be a very small part of my player pool. Elijah Hawkins, however, is going to be a big one. So he is the point guard for this team, and his usage in postseason play in the last 4 games has been outstanding. He's been playing nearly every minute. He's put up at least 26 DraftKings points in all 4 of those games, at least 30 in 3 of 4. His high was 44, which would be great at his salary of $7,500, right? So I love Hawkins here on this slate at $7,500. It's a pace-up spot against Arkansas. I think that my main 2 Texas Tech guys are going to be Toppin and Hawkins. Now, the wing position for this team is where it gets interesting. So Chance McMillan is questionable for this game. If he is back, $4,600 is a very reasonable price tag to pay for him because he's the type of guy that, like, if he's back, he's all the way back. I would have no fear in playing him if he is, in the lineup. But the problem is, with this being the last game of the night, you're probably not going to have the news that he's in the lineup, or you're going to have to late swap, right? And the problem is that late swapping down would not be the way to go, in my opinion, because you look at Kerwin Walton. He had the monster game against UNCW. I called it on the Saturday, so I said I'm letting everybody else chase that, and I'm not playing him, and he only put up 5 DraftKings points. Now, I'm not saying that I'm some master prognosticator, but UNCW's game plan was to pack the paint and force Texas Tech swings to shoot threes, and that's why Walton took 19 of them and he hit 8 of them, right? Drake's game plan was not that. So the Walton, I'm not going to be back here on this slate for him. I would much rather play Christian Anderson, who is playing more minutes and is a player that can score fantasy points in a more variety of ways than Kerwin Walton can. And if McMillan is out, I think Anderson's a guy that's going to play probably north of 35 minutes and have a real chance to put up some DraftKings points, because unlike Walton, he's due for some positive shooting regression. He's been shooting the ball really poorly, and he's a good shooter on the season, and he's got better peripheral rates on the season than Walton. But the problem is that Anderson is more expensive than McMillan. So I guess the way that you might want to approach it is to build lineups with Anderson in them and then late swap down to McMillan if you get news that McMillan is in the lineup. Because I certainly wouldn't want to play both of them because McMillan would limit Anderson's upside. So I think that might be the strategy that you would want to go with if you are interested in playing Chance McMillan here on this slate. But all right, y'all, that is going to do it for this 4-game Sweet 16 slate. It's a lot different from the 16-game slates that we were dealing with last Thursday and Friday. It's only 4 games, but I do feel like I got to go into a lot greater detail on these 4 games than I was doing on the 16 games, which is kind of nice, right? So hopefully I gave you guys all the information that you were going to need in order to build some winning DraftKings lineups and FanDuel lineups here for this Thursday night slate. If this video helped you out in any way, please hit the like button on YouTube. It helps me out a ton. Please rate and review the audio. Again, I cannot stress enough how much that helps me and how much I appreciate it when you guys do that. And also leave a comment on the video. Who's your favorite play? What did I get right? What did I get wrong? Let me know. I'm more than happy to respond because comments also help the video get notoriety as well. Like I said, this is a big month for me in terms of getting the podcast notoriety. I'm closing in on 1,000 subscribers and I can only get there with you guys' help. But that is going to do it for this episode, y'all. We will be back for the Friday night slate as well as Saturday and Sunday. So make sure you're subscribed to the channel so that way you can be with us for all of that. Remember, if you want more from me, you got the Twitter page, the Fantasy Corner Discord, and the Patreon. But that's going to do it for this episode, y'all. If you cannot tell by my general tone and my general, just excitedness, I'm really looking forward to this weekend. I think we're going to have some great college basketball games on our televisions, and I'm always here for that. And I hope that it is a great weekend in terms of television viewing, and I hope it is a great weekend in terms of DFS playing for you guys as well. So best of luck to you guys here on this Thursday night slate. Enjoy watching it. I know I will. Thank you guys for watching and listening to this point, and I will see you guys next time.